Forbes Dennis, the owner of Tennerhof, an experimental school, met Ian at the train station. First impression, very good-looking, very arrogant, very Etonian. But he was prepared. He would apply the teachings of renegade psychologist Alfred Adler, who famously broke from Freud over his theory of childhood development. You see, Adler believed every child unconsciously early on develops a life plan formed by how they measure themselves against others. Since Ian measured himself against his dazzling older brother Peter, he internalized inadequacy, a textbook case of inferiority complex, resulting in frustration and rebellion. Adler's solution: first, a new environment. Then create a new life plan, one that focuses on his strengths, his talents, to give him a chance at excellence. Then let him slide back into society. But Ian was spoiled and insubordinate and self-absorbed and challenged every rule. So first, they had to teach him how to take pleasure in learning. The simple, honest pleasure of learning. No drudgery, no rote memorization, just the joy learning can bring. And then, how to take pride in a day's work. To do this, they chose topics suited to his character, to get him interested in his education. And Tennerhof wasn't stuffy. The students were treated as guests. And it worked. Slowly, then all at once. Ian acknowledged the changes wrought in him. It was here the foundation of his character began to take on a new form, shaping the man he would become. Ian began to love books, not just their contents, but their form, the shape of the type, the weight of a binding, the elegance of a layout. He read compulsively, chased rare editions, and spoke of language as if it were weaponry. This enthusiasm never left him. So much so, he built a world-renowned book collection of eclectic rare first editions of important 20th century inventions and milestones. So valuable and prized, they were evacuated during the Blitz, now housed intact at Indiana University. Now, Ian was in Kitzbuhl to get sorted out and to prepare for the fiercely competitive Foreign Office exam to become a diplomat. To get him there, Forbes Dennis designed a syllabus, tailor-made for Ian, who at this point lacked even a high school diploma. However, he was given something far more ambitious, a broad cultivated education. He began with the rebellious, romantic poets, Byron, Shelley, and Keats, before moving through modern history, taught in French. Then came the great sweep of European thought, Kafka, Musil, Zweig, alongside Tennyson, Swift, and Shakespeare. Then science and technology, anthropology, and psychology. Now, the Foreign Office exam, an elite career, required fluency in 2 languages and a working knowledge of a third. His mornings were for learning languages, under the guidance of Forbes Dennis, an exceptional linguist. German and French came quickly, almost instinctively, like his brother Peter, who cut through German like a knife. For his third choice, Ian chose Russian, a bold choice and a curious one. But the afternoons were for pure Alpine escape. Speed ice and adrenaline never felt so exhilarating. And yet, in the quiet charm of Kitzbuhl, high above the slopes, a figure stood out, tall, refined, with a smile that hinted at secrets. A man watched through binoculars, not for sport, not for scenery, just watching. He was introduced as a tour operator. To Ian, perhaps, something more. Evening hours at Tennerhof were spent unwinding, entertainment, dining, and homework. At the dinner table, Phyllis, wife of Forbes Dennis and a celebrated published author, urged the young men to unleash their imaginations. She spurred them to shape and exaggerate their storytelling. She would begin to weave a tale and urge the young men to continue, to where it became wilder and more macabre. They created their own dinner club with a competition to tell the most spellbinding saga. At night, she read to the young men by the fire, her voice turning the cold night into something tender and wild. She took note of Ian's original way of thinking and started redirecting it. He began studying her writing process, and he began to write, refining his words with precision. The plots in fantasy were there even in the early days. He had a knack for writing absorbing descriptions and a sense of place. A fellow student said life was fun because Ian made it fun. He invented plots. We were pursued down a mountain by international agents, and we destroyed them with a concealed gun in the exhaust pipe. This imaginative view stayed with him all his life. Then came the women. He became aware of his power over women. He was extraordinarily good-looking, with a slender, athletic build. A fellow student remarked, he was irresistible to women, and he was the only man I ever knew who was. The Austrian women had a powerful weakness for the young Englishman. He ran like a prairie fire through the girls of Kitzbuhl. Within a year, he was juggling 3 regular girlfriends and had countless affairs. He was also impatient for risk-taking excitement and was endlessly inventing the most bizarre situations and pranks, causing small avalanches, which inspired the scene from The Spy Who Loved Me. Ian was also a car guy. He drove around Kitzbuhl at breakneck speed. Back home on his grandfather's estate, he was stoked to have clocked over 100 miles an hour, driving a 3-liter Bugatti. Now at Kitzbuhl, he was trying to outrun trains. When the front of his car was hit, and he was dragged 50 yards, he was badly shaken. Dennis Forbes had to be called during the night. When there was speculation he had gotten a maid pregnant, they'd had enough of his reckless behavior and began proceedings to have him expelled. He knew he had gone too far. Leaving 3 elite schools in succession, he had to face facts and a new depth of self-awareness. Only when he showed genuine remorse, apologized to Phyllis, wrote a heartfelt letter to Forbes Dennis, was he allowed to stay on. And he became their prized pupil. His mother wrote inquiring about him. Ian's qualities are considerable. He has above average intelligence, imagination, originality, and the power of self-expression. He has excellent taste, desires truth and knowledge. He is virile, ambitious, generous, and kind-hearted. He's also solitary and reserved. But he's 19, with an unusual physical and intellectual maturity. But he hasn't learned to control his impulses. He needs time to handle his complex nature. Encouraged, Eve arranged for Ian to meet the Foreign Office Selection Board, and the outcome was positive. Ian was recommended to continue with his studies, with the goal of sitting for the written exam in 2 years. After a year at Tennerhof, Forbes Dennis suggested Ian might benefit from being an external student at Munich and Geneva University to perfect his language skills, and made arrangements for him to stay with host families. Ian's Kitzbuhl education was more cosmopolitan than anything he could have attained at English University. He always had a taste for the nicer things, but in Kitzbuhl, he evolved into a European sophisticate. When he looked back on Kitzbuhl, he called it that golden time, saying, "I've learned far more about life here than all my schooling combined." He became unrecognizable from the person he was when he arrived. He became carefree, happy, the most exciting, vital sort of person. Stay tuned for the next episode of Hello Sloan. For Ian Fleming, the making of an international man. Ian Fleming arrived to study languages. Instead, he studied seduction. Europe was changing, and so was he. Between Alpine glamour and dangerous ideas, he began rehearsing the life he would one day give to Bond.